Hi, I'm John Nerrell, and welcome to the Mid-Career GPS podcast. If you're feeling stuck in your career and overwhelmed by what steps to take, I can help you. As an executive and career transition coach, I help my clients prepare, position, and promote who they are and what they do to show up and find a job they love or love the job they have. It's time to start building your mid-career GPS. So let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I am so glad you're going to spend some time with me and my guest today because I know you're going to get some great things out of our conversation. If you've been listening for a while or you're new, let's just acknowledge that we can learn a lot from listening to other people and how they tell their story. As I've said before, we are all interesting. But if we can get someone interested in who we are and what we do, great things happen for us personally and professionally. And my guest today is no exception. Dan Nestle is a 20-year marketing professional, leader, communicator, creative, storyteller, and dot connector who currently works as the leader for communications and corporate responsibility for Lixil Americas, who makes pioneering water and housing products that solve everyday real-life challenges to make better homes a reality for everyone. Dan is the founder and creative coach of Zone 3 Partners, LLC, where he helps professionals get unstuck and get started on their creative journey. He strongly believes that our journeys take us through 3 zones of personal development to find our creative purpose. And on his popular podcast, The Dan Nestle Show, Dan lets his curiosity and creativity take over to bring you observations and cool conversations about interesting stuff. Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, John. It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you too, my friend. How you been?
I've been good. It's been, it hasn't been that long since we spoke, actually.
No.
But I feel like even in a short amount of time, the world spins, things change quickly. In fact, I believe that since we talked, I began my role at Lixil. Yep. So there's a lot, there's always a career move happening. There's always opportunities going on. And I'm happy to be here to kind of ground myself again with somebody I know and somebody I respect. Glad to be here.
Well, same. And I will link this up in the show notes, but you and I had a conversation on your podcast that got released back in April. And to your point, it is so right how much the world has changed and our lives we're kind of witnessing things kind of opening up a little bit more and dealing with all of the changes as we quote unquote get back to whatever this next normal is going to be. So it's certainly an interesting time. So as always, it's great to talk to you.
Yeah, exactly, man. When we talked, I remember prefacing almost every episode with saying things like, well, we're still in the middle of this pandemic. And by the time this airs, this, hopefully we'll be out. Well, I'm really glad to say that it looks like we're pretty much getting out now. Yeah. And I mean, we're feeling open, we're feeling free. And actually this is the first recording I'm doing since the mask mandates have been lifted and since we're out there. So, I don't know, there's a whole lightness of being and lightness to my shoulders that I think I hope is going to come through as we talk today.
I absolutely. It is a good time in this ever changing and ever crazy year and spot that we're living in, but it's good we get some time today. So Dan, as we get started and you get to tell your story with us today, I'm always curious, what did you want to be growing up?
Geez. I knew this was coming on talking about a career GPS and a mid-career GPS and our, the choices that you make in your life to bring you to where you are. I didn't really imagine that I would be brought back that far to my childhood, but thanks for that, John. No, I think that like a lot of little boys, I wanted to be a cowboy probably initially when I grew up. I even started to ride horses. In fact, on a recent podcast, I was talking about that with a guest, and I think ultimately after a couple of summers of horseback riding, kind of dawned on me that there was no way I was ever going to be a cowboy. I really did enjoy horses, but by the time you're 10 or 11 years old, you start to kind of understand that, well, I'm much better at reading and writing than I am at riding. So, so then I shifted and I started to think, well, you know what? I really want to be a research scientist.
Mhm.
I put on the white lab coat for Halloween a couple of times. I thought a research scientist, whatever that is, was the way to go. And, ultimately though, I didn't really love math. So that kind of left me with this whole idea of, well, I like to read and I like to write. I'm going to have to do something that's going to use words. And that's kind of the direction that ultimately, in the long run, I suppose, in retrospect, led me into marketing and communications. And now, of course, I find that I have to do math all the time. So there's, things come around.
As a former math teacher, what did math do to you?
Math, the funny thing is that math didn't do anything to me. And when you look back at life, you think about those moments where, okay, you decide I'm not good at something, but most of the time it's nonsense. Most of the time it is, as our good old friend Carol Dweck would say, it's a mindset issue, right? So kids who think, or when I thought that, I'm not that great at math, I had no real reason to believe I wasn't great at math. I was an excellent math student through high school, but some reason it became uncool, or I didn't, I just decided that I wanted to write or read more. And then that somehow translated into, well, if I am good with words, then I must be bad with numbers. And eventually I think those paths diverged pretty far. By the time I was in my early 20s, I just had myself convinced that I wasn't mathematically inclined. I found out about 20 years later that it's not necessarily true. I mean, now I try to use both sides of my brain, and not that I have an issue with math, but I love analytics and I love looking at numbers and trends and visualizations and trying to match that up and help inform the decisions that I make for communications and for marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's one of those things where if somebody would have stood behind me and said, no, you are actually good at math, things might have been a little different.
Right. And math, in a lot of ways, especially in the roles that you have, and we'll get into talking about this a little bit more, but it's part of how we tell a story.
Yeah.
Right. It gives us data and it informs decisions and things like that. And as I've gotten to know you and listen to more of your podcast and everything and follow you, the creative side for you comes out in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
It really is what I kind of gotten to know you as. It's that part of not just what you do, but really who you are.
Yeah.
And so when you think about yourself as a mid-career professional with a vast amount of experience, why is being creative important to you being unique?
Well, it's a great question. And I've come to this point in my life where I really believe that creativity is part of all of us. So like creativity runs through you, runs through me. It's like, it is our imperative while we are here on this earth to create something. And, whether you feel like a creative person or not, your role in life is to create something, right? You're creating a book, you're creating an idea. You are, you are, sometimes you're creating people, but that you are actually putting something, there's something there that wasn't there before because of something that you've done. So, we all need to create. Now, as in my case, I had a lot of just kind of trouble figuring out what that was. Like, what am I supposed to be creating? And because I felt that I needed to have a legacy. I wanted to have a legacy. I had children. I have children, and I want, I want to leave this place better than I came in. So I really focused a lot on creativity. I focused on, why we need to be creative. And I don't like to think of creativity in terms of creativity, right? You don't define a word using the word. So, how could I make things, or how could I put something out there into, into the world that was adding something, that wasn't just kind of gratuitous.
Mhm.
And, that's how sort of I came around to the idea that curiosity and imagination combined is are things that we should cherish and you know develop, and that eventually blooms into creativity. And that creativity comes in while you are, in your day-to-day life, hopefully, but in your work. Now, remind me again, you asked me how that gets me to be unique, or how that, right?
Yeah.
I think just by virtue of being creative, you are unique. That's the whole point of creativity. It is the prime differentiator, because something that you make is just by definition something that nobody else on earth is going to make the same way. If I write a sentence and you write a sentence, maybe even if we copy the same exact words, the handwriting's gonna be different.
Exactly.
Right? There's gonna be something unique about that. I mean, hopefully we wouldn't be copying the same thing. But when you create something from your own brain, it's gonna be unique. So through my life, through my career, through the things that I've done, I didn't always feel this way, but now you look back and I say, something, this is mine.
Mhm.
And that's all culminated in my podcast. Because, frankly, I wanted to find an outlet for my creativity, and I wasn't disciplined enough at the time to write a book. I did, or at least that's what I convinced myself, that I wasn't disciplined enough to write a book. I knew that, though, I wanted to talk, and, talking with the right people in a directed way, that could add value.
Mhm.
And then that could bring value to me. It could bring value to my friends, to the people who are listening, but also to my work. So I went in that direction.
Absolutely. And I listen to you, and what comes for me as I equate and connect all of this is that that is not only a gift of yours, it is also your genius. It is that piece, what you get to do a little differently than everybody else, and putting that value out in the world. And to add on to that, though, Dan, there's also this piece where you stand very strong in your value. Not that you
Hmm.
probably don't have days maybe where you're questioning, or your confidence might be a little bit lower than other days or whatever. But at the end of it all,
Sure.
you strike me as somebody who is really um, assured and confident in the value you get to create each and every day.
But first of all, I'm really pleased that you said that, because it took me a long time to get there.
Mhm.
And I always feel like we're still on that journey, that I want to be confident. I want to provide value, but I also want to stand on my own merit. And, for the longest time, I, succumbed, I would say, to a lot of belief systems, right?
Mhm.
Where you're inculcated to believe one thing or another. And, somebody called it your own BS, right? I mean, it's that belief system, limiting beliefs, the things that get in your way, where, you're told, oh, you're not that great at math, for example, um, or one of the big ones was, you know, Dan, you're just a deferential kind of guy, you know? And, I realized somebody was trying to give me positive feedback, but told me I was deferential. So I internalized that, and I became even more deferential because of that. And in certain situations and environments, like in a business meeting, for example, or when you're trying to, interact with executives, deference is good to a point, but there's a point at which you have to say your opinion, or you have to put yourself out there. And being too deferential, comes off like you're hiding something.
Right.
If you're not going to present your opinion. So, there are extremes. So I spent a long time, I think, coming to terms with this, and understanding that um, the only thing that's preventing me from expressing myself more confidently is my own self, is my head. It's something that's in here. It's, somebody told me I was deferential, so I must be deferential. I was very susceptible to this. Well, what if I decided that, I'm not going to be deferential today? What if today I'm not going to be deferential? Today I'm going to be opposite George, right? I'm going to do the opposite of what my instinct is telling me. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to express my opinion to me. I'm going to try it twice. Right. And, that's starting that way. I eventually built myself, I think, back up to a point where, you know what? I can do this. I have something to say. I have value to bring. And shoot, I don't care if you're a CEO. I have something important to tell you, and once I kind of got around that, then I think that confidence kind of followed. But it took a long time, John. It was not an easy battle. Let's put it that way.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of the lessons, if we are able to learn it, by the time we get to a point in our mid-career journey, whether we're at the beginning, middle, or end stage of mid-career, however you want to be at, if we get to learn those kind of lessons, we have the potential and the capacity and also the agency to start making some bolder moves in our career and in our life because of that competence and the confidence we have. Your career story, Dan, is really interesting, right? I'm wondering if you could just, at a very quick and kind of high level, walk the listeners through all of the titles you have held job-wise.
Sure.
Since you graduated college, let's say.
All right. I'll try it. Quick is not my forte, but I will get there. I started off as an assistant language teacher for the Mie Prefectural Board of Education in Owase, Japan. So that got me to Japan. There's a Japan theme that's coming on here. After that, so after I was the ALT, the assistant language teacher, I became a program coordinator or a bilingual coordinator, depending on who you were talking to, for an educational company in the Tokyo area. I went from there to being, I believe, now we're reaching back. I think it was a consultant. So I was a recruiter and a consultant for a recruitment firm. Moved along to become a consulting manager for an online recruitment agency. Online recruitment company, like japansmonster.com is what they told me. It wasn't thus, but it was close. Then I went in-house to a major consulting company, and I became a staff assignment manager, right? Which is taking that recruitment stuff and moving it sort of internally facing and putting consultants on projects for a major company. I think it was at PwC at the time. After that, I quit the corporate life and started my own company and became a founder and copywriter. But my business cards just said copywriter. Mm-hmm. So I went around with the title copywriter. Sometimes I had more cards then I had other cards printed said I was an editor. So I was a copywriter, I was an editor, I was a founder, depending on what day of the week I was. But I was an entrepreneur at the time. I had my own company. After that, I was pretty much bought by one of my clients and became a PR and marketing manager for the region that I was in, for Japan first, and then I became the PR and marketing and PR manager. Went marketing first, PR second. Marketing PR manager for Japan, Australia, New Zealand. Then I came back to this is a long journey, man. I came back to the States. I became a senior manager of communications for a membership organization called the American Institute of CPAs. I'm not a CPA, by the way. But for some reason, I had as I mentioned earlier, I wasn't great with numbers, but here I am talking with my whole life is dealing with people who are accountants at this point. After being a senior manager of communications, I moved to a major PR firm, and immediately my title just went through the stratosphere as vice president of corporate and public corporate affairs, but vice president of corporate and public affairs, right? Now, I didn't know before I took this role that there are thousands of vice presidents in a PR agency. This is an agency title. It's not an executive role, but it indicates a certain level of experience, but there's hundreds of VPs. When you get to senior vice president and executive vice president, that's when the stuff really that's when you really start to be kind of a big shot in a lot of firms. But after that, I left the agency and went back in-house, became a director of marketing communications for North America. So I became a regional director, which was title-wise didn't sound like a promotion, but it was a massive promotion. That eventually became VP of marketing and communications for that same company for North America. And now I am the leader of communications and corporate responsibility for the Americas for a different company now. And essentially it's a bigger role. Funnily enough, the title isn't would look like it's not similar to VP or anything like that. But my company, which is Lixil, has done an amazing thing where they eliminated most job titles, and you're either everybody's leader. And if you're above a certain level, if you're managing people, you are a leader. So
Nice.
Managers and above, we're all leaders. But I am I'm the leader of communications and marketing in communications and public and corporate responsibility. But I'm the head of the department here in the Americas. So I report directly into the American leader.
Nice. And with all that experience, which is fantastic, right? You walked us through all of these different things that you've done.
By memory, I must add.
Absolutely, right. So I can attest to all the listeners, he was not looking at notes. And if he was, I didn't catch it. What's been the biggest lesson learned for you about changing careers or changing jobs?
So the grass is never greener, I'd say, is one of there's a lot of lessons, John, and it's hard for me to narrow it down, but I will say the grass is never greener. And the times where I have made a jump for a better title or for maybe a little bit extra money, or for some reason why I thought that maybe I was miserable where I was. And I thought that, okay, I just met a cool person who's working there, so that place is going to be better. It's not always the case that the grass is greener. So that's one of the lessons. And the other one I would say is chasing titles is an empty effort. Generally doesn't mean anything. So at least in my career, it doesn't. Anyway. Yeah. But there's
really
tons
good.
of, there's tons of things though.
Yeah.
The main thing is that, you can get caught up in hype, but maybe it's better. Like we were talking about when we talked earlier about those mid-career moments, right? Where you're just like, your hair's on fire and you don't know what the hell's going on in your job, and just know something needs to change. And there are times where, many times this happened. You heard the number of titles I had. I mean, I had those career moments a dozen times in my life, and earlier on, and in fact, a few times, I think that I decided to change jobs, maybe for not the best reason. So, one of the lessons learned is breathe a little bit, have some patience, and really evaluate where you're at to see if this like moment that you're having is repairable, where it's coming from. Is it something that's internally driven? Is it something external? Is it, is there truly an evil manager that there's nothing you can do? You just got to get the hell out of Dodge.
Right.
Or is it because, you're depressed and you don't want to come into work, and, that poison is emanating from you. So, and it's hard to see that without the benefit of hindsight sometimes, but yeah, those are the main things.
It's so good. And thank you for sharing all those things, because what we know from people we've spoken to or we've worked with, or even in our own journeys as we've tried to navigate from one position to the next, to your point is that there always is some kind of influencer that's driving our decision to go find something else, right? That moment when you start searching for jobs online is usually some kind of indicator that you're unhappy for some reason. And you're thinking, okay, it's time for me to go ahead and at least entertain the idea about, what if somebody's going to value me more? Or what if someone's going to utilize my skill set a little bit differently? And at the end of the day, it's all our own decisions as to why we leave. We can adopt a mindset to simply say, I'm going to make the best decision for myself at this time. And if this doesn't work out, I can pivot, I can navigate, I can stretch, I can go somewhere else. That everything, for the most part, is pretty much figure outable or solvable. There's a great book. I forget who it is, Dan. I don't know if it's Jen Sincero or somebody else, but the title of it is Everything is Figure Outable.
Oh, I've heard of that book.
Yes,
I don't know the author.
It's on my summer reading list. I've got to make sure I get to that. But your point about like we chase the title, right? And chasing the title, like you walked us through so beautifully about how, the title at the VP firm didn't have the kind of luster or prestige as it might have in another organization and such. And so sometimes we chase the title because we think it's going to validate us a little bit more. In leading up to our conversation today, I had asked you a question, and your response was, you cannot expect your career to make you happy.
Right.
And I know there are a lot of people who are catching this episode and they are unhappy, and they might be thinking the new job is going to solve all of the problems for them.
Mm-hmm.
So can you let us in a little bit and tell us what you meant when you said you can't expect your career to make you happy?
Yeah, sure. It's like those moments in your life where I don't know if you're this type of person, but you are just kind of wondering what something needs to change. I need to change something. Something's not right. I think I'll go out and get a new pair of pants. Right? I think I'll buy a new suit. Right? Or, maybe I need a new bicycle. Something new. There's this whole idea that there's something new is going to solve your problem. Something new is not going to solve your problem. Something new is just going to make you feel a little bit better about something you're looking at for 30 seconds. And then you're just going to be like, I'm still the same guy wrapped in the same pair of pants, or I still have the same legs riding this bike. There's nothing has changed, except I've decided on wasting money on an externality that doesn't have anything to do with it. So those are things. Things can't make you happy. The only thing that can make you happy, the only thing where you can derive happiness is from within. And it sounds hokey, but it's true. You need to have your mind in the right place in order to achieve or acquire or obtain joy. And, I've learned this time and time again, and certainly understanding your purpose and getting to the point where you're actually making choices in your life that are aligned with what you want and what you know is the right thing from your value standpoint changes everything in how pleased you are, how happy you are. So, you have to have this mindset that acknowledges that you have agency. You said it earlier, agency. And I wrote that down. The agency is like the key word. It's all about choices. Mm-hmm. So the only thing that can make you happy is your own choices. And you have agency. You're not a puppet. You can decide what you're going to do. Maybe there are pressures and externalities that are going to influence your decision, but ultimately you do have a choice. And it could be an easy choice or a hard choice, but that's the only way that you are going to be happy. It's not going to be because that job is not going to make you happy, but the way that you show up to work every day, the way that you interact with your colleagues, the way that you produce something or create something that you didn't have before, or the way that that job enables you to have the passions or to pursue the passions that matter to you outside of your job in your other time, that's a great reason to like a job. And that's a great reason perhaps to be happy. So yeah, I mean, that's probably a long way of saying this, but answering your question, but really you can't be happy. Nothing can make you happy. A career can't make you happy. A job can't make you happy. You have to make yourself happy is kind of the way it goes for me anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And with all of the things that are out there that bombard us and jockey for our attention, to your point, it's that that shiny object syndrome can sometimes really hold us back from doing the hard work. And doing the hard work, as our friend Tammy Guler-Loeb talks about so much, right? About work from the inside out in her great podcast.
She's amazing.
Isn't she? Yeah. Big shout out to Tammy.
Shout out to Tammy.
Absolutely. Hey, if you have not had a chance to listen to Tammy's podcast called Work from the Inside Out, you got to add that one to your list. That's another good career one as well.
Great career episode.
Dan, you do a lot of work with people around this whole notion about getting unstuck. What keeps people stuck in their ways and holds them back from moving forward?
It's really something that we talked about earlier, I think, when it comes down to these belief systems that you have. And those belief systems, those limiting beliefs, you can call them many different things. Some people just say blockers, whatever. They're embedded in any number of ways in your way. Sometimes it's your own fault. Sometimes it's just stuff you've learned and been taught by your parents or by teachers or by friends, reinforcing certain behaviors in your life that have resulted in you believing that you don't have what it takes to move forward. And the combination of that plus something that I think we've talked about a lot, not necessarily today, but we've talked about a lot, is believing that you're not worthy of something, which is the good old imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Now, people encounter these things, these limiting beliefs and the imposter syndrome at different times in different ways and often together. So if you are in this point where you're stuck, I mean, the first thing is to examine, why. Ask yourself, and it's asking a lot of questions. So why am I not going to do X? And if X is a massive undertaking, why am I not going to write that book? Or why can't I start writing that? Why can't I write that book? Or why am I not moving to write that book? That's a big, big thing. Instead, start with what's right in front of you. Okay, why can't I write that first sentence? Why can't I write an outline? Why can't I think of a title? Why can't I have an idea? Whatever the first thing is. And then you make that first. It's not, it really is not much to ask to write one sentence down, even if you don't keep it. But it's a movement that shows that you can indeed make some progress. So take that to the next step and the next and the next, and you'll take steps forward, you'll take steps back. But it's just a constant self-interrogation almost. Okay, wow, why am I not making this next move? Why am I not doing, I am, and sometimes you have to ask yourself as well, am I stuck because I'm just chasing the wrong thing? So evaluating that, I had this great show with an amazing coach named David Taylor Klaus. And David, also known as DTK, David put me on the hot seat. He said, he was asking me what I wanted to do. I said, yeah, I think I need to write a book. And he said, need to? Need to? Or do you want to? do you get to? And that difference between need to and want to or get to is night and day.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So how do you get from need to want? If you feel like I need to, you're giving yourself so much anxiety. You're not going to make that move, right? So there's a lot of points to address there, but I think that's, to get unstuck, it's really about addressing that initial kind of, let's make at least one small step. Let's, how do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time. Let's get that one bite. What is that one bite? So
I
trying
love, sorry to interrupt you. I
it's fine,
love that whole need to, get to, and want to.
It's unbelievable. It's life-changing.
Yeah. And I have a very dear coach who I have worked with who she is always saying, is it you? You get up in the morning, you get to go to work, or you get to do this. Like I get to throw a bowling ball, right? I don't have to go throw a bowling ball and compete. I get to throw a bowling ball. And it's such a perspective and a mindset shift in terms of how we shift our thinking to really move us forward. But let's also acknowledge that if we're going to go through and ask ourselves these questions, we have to really be prepared to ask ourselves the hard questions and sit with them and get uncomfortable in order to just get ourselves moving in that direction and start getting that momentum.
Yeah. And it helps to have somebody to help there. I mean, raise your hand, ask for help. That's why coaches are so important, and I know you're a career coach. You work with people all the time. It's very difficult to work in a bubble. You need to,
Yep.
if you can, I mean, certainly people do it by themselves, but don't be afraid to reach out to somebody and have those conversations. Somebody who can facilitate those conversations.
And especially by the time we get to mid-career, we've acquired knowledge. We not only like to think, but we are smart in a lot of different ways. And so we think we can just take care of it. We can figure it out. I've done it before. I can do it again. But sometimes the playing field changes, or you've had things happen where you've lost your way a little bit in terms of how you tell your story, or you position yourself, or you promote who you are and what you do.
Yeah.
And that's really one of the ways in which coaching can truly help you move forward in that way.
Absolutely. So, yeah. And my life would not be as enjoyable as it is now, or I don't think that I would feel the level of joy that I have in my life now without the great people that have coached me along the way, and it's such a rewarding experience. Sometimes they were real coaches, like real kind of, okay, that's what they do for a living. They are a professional coach. Sometimes they're just great managers or people you're friends with who really just ask you the right questions at the right time.
Yeah. So Dan, as we start wrapping up here, and thank you for this conversation today. We've covered so much, but what advice would you give someone listening to help them build their mid-career GPS as they're figuring out whatever's next for their career?
I think I have this post-it stuck up right behind my monitor, and it just says, "What did you learn today?" And that, I think, is the key to anything that you want to do in your life, and certainly in your career, is to just keep learning. Read a lot. And, hey, and you might say, you might hear, no, don't read novels. Just you should read business books. Read whatever you want to read.
Yeah.
Get some perspective, but just expand your brain and your mind. Listen to the people that you admire. I mean, just listen to folks, whether it's podcasts like John Narrow's podcast, Mid-Career GPS, or whether it's Tammy Guller-Loeb's show, or hopefully my show, Dan Nestle show, whether it's any
show, absolutely,
or any number of things, any number of shows out there. There's, the great thing about these past couple of years is the amount of information that's available for you to just stick in your ear and listen and learn has, expanded. I don't know if it's algorithmically or geometrically or what the ICLE is, but it's really expanded a lot. And you can keep listening. And the final thing that I would say is you have to make great connections, right? And I said have to, but really you should say, you know what, I'm going to go out today and I have a great chance. I get to make some great connections with great people. Networking is a word that's overused and sometimes, misused, and people take advantage of this. But connecting with people in a meaningful way, expanding your circle of influence and your circle of friends, as long as it's not for like gratuitous, it's not for gratuitous reasons. You'll make great connections. You'll meet people who are going to be your friends and your connections, and you'll learn and new doors will open. So keep making connections. That's a lot, but yeah, I'd say that those are the things.
Well, as a dot connector and somebody who really does a phenomenal job at connecting people.
Thank you.
Getting back to our math theme from earlier, I'm going to share a data point with you that you may not be aware of.
Love it.
I know, right? So before the podcast, I had chance to hop on your LinkedIn profile and look at a few things or whatever. And if you haven't, so anybody listening, if you haven't gotten the sense that Dan is a giver, you need to go back and listen to this whole episode. Because being a giver in terms of how you connect and you build relationships with people is foundational to what Dan Nestle does. And when you go look at his LinkedIn profile, you will see something on there that I have rarely seen in all of the people that I am connected with. You have given 38 recommendations to people in your network.
Oh, sure. I love giving recommendations.
Right?
Yeah.
And to me, it is one of the nicest things when you know somebody well enough to vouch for the quality of their work and who they are, that you take a few minutes and you write them a recommendation that will live on their LinkedIn profile as long as they choose to have it there. And to give 38 recommendations is a data point of how much you give that I think is really important for us to call out here, because it is such a great way to keep your network engaged and appreciated, especially when you know people well enough to recommend them.
Wow. I haven't been counting. It is, but that is a great data point that I wasn't aware of. And absolutely, I will always support people who I know and who are legitimately good at what they do. I just think it's the right thing to do. And I'm a big believer in karma. So yes. I'm always happy to help others to succeed. But yeah, definitely ask people for recommendations out there. If you're out there, I mean, that lives on your LinkedIn profile. I don't know when the last recommendation I got was, not that I'm fishing, but, look, another part of that, John, is as you get along in your career, you manage more and more people, and you have a personal stake in other people's success. At least I hope you do. If you're a manager and you don't feel like you have a personal stake in your team's success, you need to find a new role. Yeah. Is my feeling.
Well said.
Just I'll put that out there. But some of the people that I've really loved writing recommendations for are people who I have either managed directly or have been on a team that I've led or have in some way or shape or form served with me in some way. And, I think all boats rise with the tide. Just, support people and, make sure that you are behind people's success and behind their growth.
Well, I will tell you, I didn't read all 38 that you wrote, but the few that I did, that I did, it's really true. You could definitely tell that you knew their work extremely well, and we're happy to write that for them. So it's a great thing for anybody listening to go ahead and do. So, Dan, I want to thank you for spending some time with us today. Please share with everybody what's next for you and where can they follow and connect with you and all that good stuff.
Well, look, I mean, I am, in a fantastic role, and I get to go to work every day for a fantastic company, and I work with the global team of incredibly talented people. So for the time being, I think that that's where I'll be focusing most of my energies for during the day anyway, even sometimes at night, because it's a Japanese company. So I do occasionally have meetings with Japan in the evenings, in the mornings. What are clocks now these days anyway, John? Time is just is an illusion. But I want to become a better communicator. I want to have more influence in my industry. I want to give back to my industry eventually. I figure I'm about halfway through my career, and maybe a little more than that. But I'm so excited about what's coming next in my own career. So I'm excited about that. But otherwise, my podcast, I think, is the other thing that I'm really looking to develop. I've been at it now for just over a year. As of the time of this recording, I'm probably around the same, like similar to you. I'm just over a year. I got about 50 something episodes in. I have some amazing guests. Love having great conversations. I mean, John, we're here because of that, and because you're on my show. It was such a pleasure talking to you there. So I want to develop that more. I'm going to develop that more. So I'd love for your listeners to check out the Dan Nestle Show wherever you listen to podcasts, and just the Dan Nestle Show. You can find me on LinkedIn. I have, as John said, I've recommended 38 people. Perhaps you could be the 39th. I don't know. But I'm happy to connect with people if there's a reason and a rationale. I don't accept, lead generation nonsense, but happy to connect with people for meaningful reasons. And then like all over social media, DS Nestle, S is for Steven. So DSNESTLE. Pretty much most places, that's my handle. Got in early in the game. So,
nice. Good for you. Good stuff. Well, yeah. And if anybody wants to reach out and connect with you on LinkedIn, they can reference this podcast episode so you know where it came from as well. But Dan, I appreciate you. I love what you're putting out there in the world and respect you. And I'm so glad we connected, and just keep up the great work. And I look forward to talking to you really soon, my friend. Thanks so much.
This has been great, John. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. And wherever you are in your journey, keep building your GPS 1 mile at a time. And remember, how you show up matters. Make it a great day. If you enjoyed today's show and don't want to miss an episode, follow on Apple Podcasts or wherever you usually listen. And I'd appreciate it if you would leave a rating and review. Visit johnnarroll.com to download your free copy of the 55-minute career transition jumpstart to help you start building your mid-career GPS. And don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me on social at John Narroll Coaching. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.